This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host for this Planet MicroCap Virtual Investor Conference. I'd like to thank you all for hanging around with us for this entire day of panels and virtual keynotes. Now, I have a very special virtual keynote that literally we just confirmed. So you are getting some, real-time information as it's happened. My special guest is Charles Payne. He is the host of Making Money with Charles Payne on Fox Business, as well as the CEO of Wall Street Strategies. And Charles, thank you so much for joining us, and take it away, my friend.
You got it, Robert, and congratulations on all your success. And hello, everyone, at the Planet MicroCap Showcase 2020. It's all about the stock market for all of us. And I got to tell you something. As someone who watches it day to day, we see these global COVID-19 cases, the deaths, they continue to roll up around the world. In fact, in many places in the most recent weeks, seeing their worst days, their worst weeks of carnage. The pandemic is really beginning to wrap its tentacles around the entire world. Now, of course, initially the crisis was viewed initially as a financial situation through the lens of an interpretation of the global supply chain out of China. Obviously, as the virus grew, the financial coverage really gave way, and now the stock market is sort of seen as a barometer, not just of the financial arena, but really of society as a whole. If you look, for instance, at any TV screen these days, from local news to national cable news, you're going to see a bug, what they call them a bug, right? The little thing in the corner is going to either be the Dow, the S&P, and it's going to show you what the market's doing, updating that constantly, as well as updating the coronavirus stats. They're going hand in hand. And I know it sounds corny to a lot of people, but I think the notion of the stock market as a proxy for the nation has gotten even much better, and it goes way beyond the financial proxy these days. We know the stock market has always reflected society, except these days, I think it's kind of a barometer of hope as well. Now, it's obvious the market hasn't been reacting to economic data, certainly not in the last couple of weeks. Instead, I think it's reacting to hope and the notion of closure, perhaps sooner rather than later, which is something that I got to tell you, big-time Wall Street firms and analysts, they just don't know how to model that. They don't know how to model American-style hope. Wall Street is Main Street right now more than ever, and I think it's something that investors should not only recognize but embrace. Now, during the month of March, every pro said we were going to go down, we were going to test the lows, we were going to continue to take these drubbings, and somehow this market found its footing. It's begun to rebound. And listen, I'm not one of these guys who goes into stats about the bull market, bear market, and all that kind of stuff. So we all know about these bull market bounces and bear markets. I mean, take, for instance, the great crash in 1929, October. The market had peaked that year at September 3rd, 1929 at 381, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It did not get back up there. It did not close at that level again until November 23rd, 1954. So these kind of rebounds are sometimes written off. I'm not sure that should be the case this time. I really believe that this market resolve is more than just a knee-jerk technical bounce. So I'm really psyched. I'm really excited about where we are. I'm really excited about where the country is. The death and destruction has been just untold. I mean, no one was prepared for this. And still, there's some rays of hope that are coming through all of this. And I think some of those rays of hope are expressed through the stock market. Now, technically, it's hard to gauge where we are. I mean, listen, you can't argue PE when there's no such thing as an E right now, unless you consider the E to be existence. In other words, will some of these companies be around next year, a year from now, 5 years from now? Will some of these companies be around when we're not around? The answer obviously is yes. And if that's the case, I feel very, very confident for the market overall. Just for those folks who are playing the broader market, I know beyond the micro cap and the small cap space, keep in mind, this whole debate about a V-shaped recovery in the economy. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we will get a U-shape, but we have already gotten a V-shaped bounce in the stock market, and it's not unusual. Coming out of the Great Recession, and the market, the S&P was up 36% before the recession was over. 1990, 1991, up 24%. 1982, the recession was over long before it was timestamped, and in fact, up 30%. So I'm not sure how long it takes for our economy to come out of this. I do believe it will happen sooner than the experts think it will. I think the market will outperform better than the experts think it will. And I think right now, this has become an even better moment for your industry, for your niche in this market. Think about what really is standing out right now: small businesses and innovation. I mean, obviously, there have been so many bright spots during this crisis. Everyday heroes, obviously, our first responders, but also what we're calling new American heroes, right? Folks that keep food on our shelves, that feed us, that get the packages to our homes. Most of these have obviously not had paying jobs. In fact, it really is a privilege to be able to quarantine and still not have your pay interrupted. But these industries, these people, they're being elevated. Small businesses are being elevated. Entrepreneurs are being elevated to a place where Americans really love and respected them. And this is on top of the fact that they were already loved and respected. You know, a couple of years ago, Gallup did a poll. 70% of Americans had a great deal to a lot of confidence in small business. Only 20% felt the same way about large businesses. I got to tell you, it's going to get even better. One of the reasons for that: the American dream, the backbone of the economy. Most people believe that to be true. People are personally invested, determined, they're accountable to their customers. They create jobs on a local level. They're involved in a community. They're responsible for family, often family owned. These are all great positives. And I think what we're going to see, even to fine tune it just a little bit more for the Planet MicroCap space, think about some of these areas that are working right now. Essential industries. Marijuana in 33 states, labeled an essential industry. This is absolutely huge, folks. Listen, I hear anecdotal stories that alcohol makes you more vulnerable to the coronavirus. Even without that kind of stuff, the fact that we're going to get high marks in the marijuana space as we get more and more stories about mental stress, family fatigue, personal issues. You watch, it's going to really be amazing how this helps that industry. Biotech and pharma, need I say more? I mean, we know everyone, 70 vaccines around the world are right now in the pipeline. Promising treatments are in the pipeline. But I think what you're going to also see is this sort of legislative, these bureaucratic hurdles that hurt particularly the smaller cap, the micro-cap names in pharma and drug development. Watch some of that get fixed. It's nuts that where we are right now. It really is nuts. I think you'll see some of that get fixed. A big story, of course, is energy, the fuel space and the energy space. We saw the May West Texas Intermediate contract go down 300%. It's just sort of a reminder, really, that even in a global market, we should have greater control over our own production. And I really think that this is where we start to even focus more. I know there are some established companies that may have taken some big risks. Some of those companies may get hurt, but I think what will emerge are more domestic ideas, more domestic plays, not only in the fuel space, but also in the alternative energy space. And a lot of that's going to get a big boost as we come out of this post-coronavirus environment. And then, of course, there's just this overall feel: cut the bureaucracy, reignite American ingenuity, start to make things here again. Let's wake up. We were sleepwalking. We really were sleepwalking. The big corporations spent billions of dollars buying back their own stock. We have been here before. We just had a knockout punch, a wake-up call. And I think you guys at this Planet MicroCap Showcase are there to answer the bell. So have a great conference. Robert Kraft is the man, and I hope to see you all soon.
Charles, thank you so much. If I could ask one quick audience question, and by audience I mean myself. You're an investor too, and many people who are listening to this are investors, whether microcap, large cap, small cap, mid cap, all different asset classes. I mean, for you personally, how are you managing your portfolio from, let's say, when some of this initial news started, like end of February, when first kind of crash started happening? How are you managing all this volatility?
The first thing I did was I tried to raise some cash, and I guess I got my cash level up to about 25-30%. There's certain positions I knew I would be down on, but I'm okay. I bought them for long term, the whole longer term, and I've been really I've been going at this in a two-pronged way. At least I thought I was, Robert. Trading opportunities, because we were so oversold. This was the fastest bear market in the history of mankind. So there were stocks that were just so oversold, you had to buy them. but also as a long-term buy and hold. But I found myself trading the buy and hold ideas too. So I got into Uber as a buy and hold. I thought I would buy it and hold it for a year or two. I sold it after like 3 weeks. Disney, I sold after 3 weeks. So I've got a few of these longer term things. Adobe we're in, Boeing at the like 105, but I also own some at 300. But it's so interesting that the swings were so crazy initially that the gains I could not ignore because cash is also king. Now that it feels like we've established a bottom, I'm going to start to take a more deliberate look at longer term investments, stocks that are extremely oversold. One end of the spectrum will be these companies with great balance sheets and upside potential, companies that were already taking market share, companies with pricing power. But the other side of the spectrum also will be smaller names that I think now have a chance to blossom in the aftermath of a lot of these big names blowing it.
So one last question, because I really enjoyed your reformulation of PE instead of, from price to existence. So dive into that. How would we then maybe calculate existence then for those who are listening?
I think we all kind of believe Amazon will be here long after we're not around, and Google will be here long after we're not around. And even think about the energy situation, right? Even before coronavirus, even before this crazy war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, energy had its issues. And I'm sure there's some folks at your conference who are looking for innovative ways to fill that void, right? That energy void. I think the idea of this sort of government mandated stuff is not going to necessarily work, but I think there is a window there somewhere. So I'm just not so sure that Chevron will be here another 100 years, maybe 30 or 40. So companies that I think really will exist that will be household names for my grandchildren and even their children. I feel comfortable owning those names. And again, sometimes it sounds corny, but think of the names that have held up pretty well. Johnson & Johnson was founded in the mid 1800s. Smucker's was founded in the late 1800s. These are names we take for granted. McCormick is a 150-year-old company. These are the names that have done extraordinarily well. So that's what I'm thinking about on one hand, names like that I think can still take some market share, that still have some pricing power, and that will be around for a long period of time. And then I am speculating on the newer names, the cloud names and some of that stuff, because those are the stocks that really, really can take off. Shopify, for instance, is a name that just goes crazy. If you're on the right side of that, you can make, in a normal market, you can make 30% in a couple of months. In this kind of a market, you can make that in 2 days. I know because I've already done it once or twice in this pullback.
Do you mind if we do a short disclosure?
Sure.
Okay, so it was Amazon, Google, Chevron, J&J, and McCormick.
Amazon and McCormick, we own.
Okay, and Google and Chevron, Google and J&J.
No Google, no J&J.
Right,
just it's in a model portfolio, but I don't own it.
Got it. Well, with that, Charles, thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun, and stay safe. Love to the family, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Same to you, buddy. Same to you.
Thank you.